almost 2 times a week, on Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I recommend wearing headphones if you would like to hear the gentle mic brushing. Let's go ahead and get right to tonight's case. This case occurred on March 1st, 2008 in Rains County, Texas. This is the true story of the Caffey family. Before I get started, I just want to give you a warning. This story will include the tragic murder of several people, including children. So if that is too much for you to hear, I completely get it. Just want to let you know in advance. Okay, so let's talk about Erin Caffey and her family. She was born on July 27th, 1991. She had two parents. Penny was her mother and Terry her father. And she had two younger brothers, Matthew, who was around 3 years younger, and Tyler, who was about 8 years younger. And they were a very religious family. They attended Bible study every Wednesday night. They went to church every Sunday. They spent multiple hours rehearsing together every week for their performance at church. The mother would play the piano. The brother played the guitar and harmonica. And Erin sang. She would sing beautiful solos at church. And anyone you could ask there would tell you that she sang like an angel. And she enjoyed doing it. It wasn't as if any of these kids didn't want to be going to church, performing in church, or any of that. They were all very religious. The parents were actually youth ministers at their church. it was. So, Penny felt this would be a good opportunity to provide her with some much-needed individual instruction. Now, Erin, who had been a very sociable girl, was now reduced to only being able to socialize at church. And the boys at church loved her. Okay? Boys were coming to church just to see her. When she was 16, she had access to a car and she got a job at Sonic as a car hop. Now, she was the only person there who was actually wearing roller skates to, take orders at people's cars. And once again, the boys at Sonic loved her. Boys were coming to Sonic just to see Erin. One day in the fall of 2007, a guy named Charlie Wilkinson showed up at Sonic. And Erin came to his car to take his order. And of course, like all the other guys, he was quite taken by her. And after a short time, they began dating. Now let me just tell you a little bit about Charlie Wilkinson. He had just returned from boot camp with his Texas National Guard unit. He lived with his dad, his stepmom, his stepbrother and stepsister, and he had a half-sister. His dad worked at the paper mill, and his parents had divorced. He was only seeing his mother a couple of times a year. He was very into hunting and fishing, and he was proficient at using a firearm. He didn't have any legal history. He had never been in trouble. He didn't have any disciplinary problems at school. He was returning to high school that fall 2007, for his senior year. It was said that he was a guy who did have a temper, so if people pushed him too hard, he would get explosive but never hurt anybody. He would be more likely to punch a desk or a wall, and he was the type who would walk away from a fight. So not a guy who was looking for trouble or wanted to be in any trouble, but a guy who knew how to control himself to some extent. So now Erin's parents did not allow them to go on dates alone. He was allowed to come over the house, and they spent a lot of time together over her house. And they spent a lot of time talking on the phone together, and they spent a lot of time together at Sonic. So I assume they found ways to be alone without her parents knowing. She actually had a phone curfew, which was at 10 o'clock, so after 10 o'clock she wasn't allowed to talk on the phone. Now, around December of 2007, she asked if she could return she went back as a freshman. She was 16, but I guess she must have been just a little bit behind, because in my head typically people are 14, maybe 15 as a freshman. Regardless, so she was in high school and so was Charlie. And so they had even more time to spend together. They wound up having sex for the first time in December, and he gave her a promise ring shortly after that. When her parents saw the ring, they were not happy. And Terry, her father, went and spoke to Charlie and said, "That is not appropriate for you to give my daughter a promise ring. She is only 16. You can't suggest that the two of you will be together for life when she's so young." And then they caught Erin talking on the phone after phone curfew with Charlie, so they grounded her. And Charlie was no longer allowed to come over the house. This was in February of 2008. Erin started talking a lot in school to her friends about wanting to kill her parents, because that was the best way for her to be able to be with Charlie. And she had spoken to Charlie about having him kill her parents. And he had said, "Why don't we just run away?" But she said, "That would never be enough. I need them dead." He had suggested just getting her pregnant, and then they would have to allow the couple to be together. But Erin said she was too young to have a kid and she didn't want to do that. So Charlie kind of agreed, because he really, really was in love, or he thought he was in love, and wanted to do anything he could for Erin, no matter what. Penny, the mother, was at the public library one day. I guess they didn't have internet at home, and it was 2008. Maybe, a lot of people didn't have high-speed internet yet at their homes, so she went online at the library and looked up Charlie's MySpace and found that he talked about things like sex and getting drunk. She did not like it. She told her husband, and they decided that Erin would no longer be allowed to see Charlie. When they told Erin, she acted like it was totally fine. She wasn't upset. She said, "I was planning on breaking up with him anyway, so it's fine." And that was February 27th. So now moving to the date of the crime, March 1st, 2008. Just to give you everyone's age at this time on this day, Erin was 16, Charlie was 19, Penny, the mother, 37, Terry, the father, 41, Matthew was 13, and Tyler was 8. So Charlie found someone to help him to do this crime. He found his friend Charles Wade, who was 20, and he needed money. So he agreed to do it for $2,000 cash, which they promised him would be found in the family's lockbox. Charlie because she was very, very into her boyfriend and wanted to do whatever he wanted to do, wanted to always be with him, wanted his approval. That's what my understanding was. So if he said, I'm gonna go do this crime, she was like, okay, so am I, kind of thing. So she went along. So about 1:30 a.m., they went to Erin's house. She came outside in her pajamas. She got into the car, and they drove around for an hour, discussing what the plan would be. And according to Charlie, he once again suggested that they not do this, but rather just run away. And she vetoed it. So they went to the house. The two girls waited in the car. The men went in. They had 2 samurai swords and a .22 caliber pistol. Charlie started shooting at the parents in their bedroom, but the gun jammed. So his friend handed him the samurai sword, and the friend fixed the gun. And he continued to shoot at the parents, and Charlie stabbed Penny with the sword, nearly decapitating her. Then they left the parents for dead, and they went and murdered the 2 boys as well. Then they searched the house for any valuables, got the $2,000, and set the house on fire to hide the evidence, I suppose. And they got in the car and they left. Charlie and Erin went straight back to his trailer and had sex. Meanwhile, back at the house, Terry, the father, was still alive, very barely. He was alive in a burning house. He managed to crawl out of there, and he crawled next door, and the neighbor called the police for him. He was in horrific shape, like hanging on to life by a thread. He had been shot multiple times. So he was able to be saved, but sadly, the mother and the 2 boys did not survive, nor did the house. So the father was able to tell them that Charlie Wilkinson was one of the people who did this, along with somebody else that he didn't know. The police went out and got Charlie Wilkinson. They found Erin in the trailer, and they took her down to the police station. She acted like she had no idea what was going on. She told them she was in the house fire, and 2 men with swords, dressed in black, kidnapped her and made her drink something, and now she doesn't really remember anything else. They ultimately checked her blood and found no substances in there. She had not been drugged. She had not inhaled any smoke. She didn't smell like smoke, and they weren't buying the story. were speaking to Charlie Wilkinson, and he was telling the details. He explained that Erin wanted him to do it, asked him to do it, even though he had wanted for them to just run away. All four of these, I want to call them kids, but all four of these people involved in the crime, they were all taken into custody. Once Terry made a full recovery and came to really learn what had happened, of course he was at first very angry, isn't even the word. His family had been taken from him, and his home. But, believe it or not, he decided to forgive his daughter because of his faith, and he asked that no one receive the death penalty because already enough lives had been lost. And ultimately, he became ordained as a minister and started using his story to help teach forgiveness. Now, what happened with their cases? Here is how it all turned out. Erin pled guilty in 2009. She got 2 life sentences to be served consecutively, plus 25 years, and she will be eligible for parole in 40 years. Both of the men, they got life without parole. Bobby Johnson, the girlfriend, she pled guilty to being an accomplice, and she got 40 years, up for parole in 20. And Erin has been interviewed by both Dr. Phil and Piers Morgan, and she has continued to maintain her innocence, that it wasn't her idea, and that is the case. So what do you think? I will tell you some of my thoughts. First of all, my heart goes out to Penny, Matthew, and Tyler. May they rest in peace. In no way did they deserve one bit of what happened to them. And, of course, I also feel terrible for Terry, the father. He lived through something so unthinkable, and he lost everything in a moment. It's like 1 minute he was enjoying a night's sleep, and then he is awoken to this horrible nightmare, worse than a nightmare. Now, how could this happen? Why did this girl, who was this angel in church, sang so beautifully, was so involved in her faith, and then she turned into this monster with no heart? Like, not only did she want to kill her parents as her first choice of what to do in order to be with Charlie, but it's okay, take my brothers as well because they'll be witnesses. So yeah, cases where, you know, there was at least the killer was thinking they were going to live in the house, they were going to get the money. Like, here, no, none of that was even the issue for her. She wasn't going to get any money. She wasn't going to get the house. She just wanted to be with Charlie and not have her parents in the picture at all. It doesn't make any sense from any perspective. And someone, I mean, at least if she didn't have this sense, even though Charlie was so in love with her, couldn't he have explained to her that her plan makes no sense? That she's 16, she'll be 18 before she knows it, and she doesn't have to do what her parents say. I mean, and how they really thought they were going to get away with it. It's just so ridiculous. So ridiculous. And this guy, Charles Wade, for $2,000 he did this. Did he really think $2,000 was a lot? And to just go kill people that did nothing to you for some money? No. And the stupidest part of this is the girlfriend, Bobby Johnson. What was she thinking? I mean, I talked about what she might have been thinking, but I know from experience as a teenager, when you have a crush on a guy and you want to do anything you can do to get him, and if you do get him, you want to do anything you can do to keep him, right? But when I say anything, I don't mean anything. You might do some stupid things. You might succumb to some form of peer pressure, but not going along when people are killing people and burning down a house and letting your car be involved and you sitting outside and waiting and you driving around with them for an hour while they talk about it. What was wrong with her? She looked like a normal person, but so did everybody here. I don't know. It's so crazy. It is just so crazy how you find 4 people come together and let this happen. And they all ruined their own lives and took so many lives, and it's just such a mess of tragedy. So I am going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found it to be thought-provoking. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and I hope you have a wonderful day or night